Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from your host Havron from Optimal MTG. As I do review video from a modern league that I played Blue Red Murktide in a few months ago. So here I am to cover the matches that I played and how the results ended up turning out. As you can see here, this was the list that I played. So we got your preset 19 lands. You got your baubles, considers. At the time, I was playing two spell pierce and two spell snare. This was briefly just after um, Phyrexia Obi-Wan came out. So as you can see in the sideboard, we'll get to that in a moment. But we've got the 4 lightning bolts, 4 ragmans, 4 unholy heats, 2 dress downs in the main as kind of like that makeshift slot filler. Place of Legend Shredders, 3 counter spells, 4 Expectorations, 1 Brazen Border, and 3 Murktide Regents. Just wanted to quickly note of the 0 Dragon's Rage Channelers, as at the time, there was an increase in endurances seeing play. So DRC isn't very good in that kind of metagame, and so it resulted in me wanting to play none because I didn't feel 2 was worthwhile enough, so I just cut them entirely. In the sideboard, we had typical 1 Fluster Storm. Wanted to try out the new Minor Misstep to see how it would play. So we got 2 of those there. Got 2 Subtleties, 2 Abrades, 2 Blood Moons. We got the split here, Seasoned Pyromancer and Fury. And then we got 2 Enlaces Hearses and 2 Engineered Explosives. So that kind of rounds out the 75 there. So with that, let's hop into the matches and see how it goes. All right, so here we are with game 1 of the first round here. You can see that we won the die roll, and we decided to mull the first hand here because you can see there are no lands. Opponent also chooses the mulligan, but we decided to keep this hand, and I end up shipping away the dress down because it's most likely the least likely card that we're going to play right away. And the rest of the hand, it does look pretty good, and Counterspell does a good job if we can get in early with the Ragman. So keep here on 6, and start the game off with a Delta into Bauble. We crack the Bauble, targeting ourselves, allowing us to look at the top card of the library. As you can see here, it's a Counterspell. We don't want it, so we go fetch for Stevens on tap, and we play Ragman on turn 1. So we draw on our opponent's upkeep. It turns out to be a bolt, and our opponent seems to be on Mono-White Hammer. So they go turn 1 Plains at Ornithopter into Sigarda's Aid. So we're already a little bit on edge here. So we draw for the turn. It's an expressive iteration. We choose to go Lightning Bolt on the Ornithopter, and then swing it with the Ragman so we can make a treasure. Yeah. And also we end up flipping the Colossus Hammer from our opponent. So we leave that one in exile and pass it back to the opponent. So the opponent chooses to play Marsh Flats. They crack it for a Sacred Foundry. Now at this moment, Sacred Foundry is very confusing because normally Hammer doesn't play red. Normally it plays blue as a splash color, so they don't really know what to make of it, but they follow up by tapping the Foundry for an Esper Sentinel. And then the opponent passes the turn back to us. So we draw a Delta, we play the Delta, we go in for the attack, and the opponent decides to block. Opponent plays a plane, taps planes, play Blasphemous Skills, so we're prompted to fetch with our Delta. We grab an island, and then we go bolt on the Sentinel so that we could pay the mana without having to use the treasure token. And then the skill fizzles, and then we pass the turn back to the opponent. Plays Plains. They tap 2 for Stoneforge Mystic. And they fetch up another Colossus Hammer. And then they play the Colossus Hammer, assuming that the coast is clear, which unfortunately it is for them. And they immediately equip it to the Mystic. Do disregard his aid. So we untap, we draw Spell Pierce. We cannot attack, so we end up passing the turn back. Opponent decides to go on the attack, so they smack it for 11, and we choose not to block. So we go to 5. Opponent proceeds to play Ornithopter, and we proceed to counterspell it, as we don't want them having more pressure or more ways to get in the way of us attacking them. So sack the treasure to play Consider, try to find some action. We see Consider, we end up binning the Consider and draw a Murktide off it. So we untap, we draw a Delta. Proceed to play the Delta, fetch with the Delta. And we grab another island. We go to attack with the Ragvan. We connect with the Ragvan, and we flip over Skrelv here. Without realizing that Skrelv can't block because of the Might, I sack the treasure and play the Might. I play Skrelv. And then now play... so instead of having the mana to go Iteration into Regent, we instead go Skrelv into Murktide Regent. And then pass turn back. Opponent now plays Stoneforge Mystic again. And because we didn't have the extra mana open, they tutored up Shadow Spear. We can't Spell Pierce it. So we end up getting roughed up real bad and lose game 1. All right, everybody, we're back for game 2 of round 1 against Hammer. Just wanted to briefly show how I sideboarded here. So I ended up taking out 1 Shredder, 3 counter spells, and 2 Spell Pierces, and also 2 expressive iterations, bringing in the 2 Minor Missteps, the 2 Abrades, Seasoned Pyromancer, and a Fury. Also, 2 Engineered Explosives. So kind of just get an idea of sideboarding here. So we're obviously going to be on the play for game 2 here. We decided to keep this hand. It's got lands and spells. Can't ask for much more. Opponent mulled to 5, so it's kind of a big deal for us. So we start off with Canal, holding up either Unholy Heat or Consider. Opponent plays Marsh Flats, fetching immediately for a Plains. They tap the Plains to play Sigarda's Aid. Can't do anything about that. So we end a turn, go Consider. We see a Spellstar on top, and we decide to keep it. We untap, we draw on a Braid. We play tap Steam Vents. And then we end turn. Put on taps. They play an Inkmoth Nexus. Proceed to play Giver Runes. And then they pass the turn back to us. We choose not to heat, just in the case of the situation that they played in response Hammer to protect the runes. So we untap, we draw Mr. Rainforest, we play another Canal, and continue to sit back and do nothing, because Shredder is not going to do anything promising right now. allowing us to kind of like maintain ground. So opponent has planes and Inkmoth. We decide spells there to Stoneforge Mystic. Oh, sorry, my bad. Not spell snare. We decide to Unholy Heat the Giver Rune's first in response. Then we proceed to spell snare, Stoneforge Mystic. We kind of did it out of order. Either way, it's all done the same way. So the end of turn, we untap, we play the Misty. We now proceed to play our Ledger Shredder. Pass turn. Opponent taps for another Giver Runes. And also playing the Colossus Hammer, allowing us to connive. So we draw a canal, we discard the canal, just because we don't want to get rid of any of these cards right now. Like, iteration's still fine. It'll help pull us ahead soon enough. But yeah, we decide to fetch the for the Misty. We go grab an island. Before the hammer resolves, we abrade the Giver Runes so that the hammer doesn't connect to anything. And turn pass back to us. We untap, we draw dress down. We now go Expressive Iteration. It looks pretty good. So we put a bolt in our hand, put a bolt to the bottom, and then we exile Shredder, play the Shredder, allowing us to connive. And I believe we pitched the bobble. So now one of our legislators is a 2/4. We attack 2 and pass a turn. Opponent decides to play planes. They activate the Meatcloth Nexus. They decide to attack. I decide to block. And then they try to play another hammer. And it resolves. So they attach it to the Nexus. Unfortunately, I sure to dies, but at least we're not dead, right? So the hammer unattaches after the Nexus turns off again. We draw for the turn. Legislator, so we play Legislator again. Swing for 2. And pass. Opponent now plays another Stoneforge Mystic. And to protect ourselves, we're going to go dress down in response so that Mystic just comes in as a 1/2, which is good for us. Opponent decides to pass. Dress down goes away. We're going to tap again. We draw a Consider. So we're going to start off with Lightning Bolt on the Stoneforge Mystic. And then play Consider so we can get our double connive trigger action going on. We discard a Canal. And then I believe we discard the Ragman. So we got 2 2/4s now. We see a Delta, we bin it, and we draw a minor misstep off it. We play the Odwara. We proceed to attack for 4, put opponent to 11. Opponent taps, and they concede. Alright, so now we're back with game 3 from round 1 to see how this goes. Just want to ensure that we didn't really make any further changes. Oh, it seems we did. So we retook out the Seeds of Pyramids here, and we took out 3 Ragavans and an Expressive Iteration in this situation. And so we decided to bring back in on the draw the Spell Pierces and the Ledger Shredders. Alright, so opponent decides to be on a play. They roll a 6. We choose to keep this hand. Lands and spells again. Pretty clean. Opponent rolls to 5. Opponent rolls to 4. And they keep on 4. So to start off the Secret Coast pass turn. We draw, we play Mr. Rainforest. And proceed to pass back. Opponent plays the plains. They tap the plains, play Springleaf Drum. That's fine. We let it resolve. And a turn, we're gonna fetch for Stevens tapped. Oh, untapped. We shocked. Oh yeah, to consider. That's right. We see a bauble. We decide to keep the bauble, and then we untap. We proceed to play a Misty. We fetch for an island. We play the Ledge Shredder and the bauble, so we get a connive trigger. We decide to ban one of our excessive amount of burn in the form of Unholy Heat, so we can make Shredder 2/4, and then crack to look at the top card of opponent's library, which was a Sigarda's Aid, and pass the turn back to them. On their upkeep, we draw a Canal. Opponent has a Plains, and this goes to play Stoneforge Mystic, which we didn't really have anything for anyways. They decided to tutor up a Colossus Hammer and pass the turn back to us. So on our turn, we draw a Strand. We play the Canal. We attack for 2. Opponent takes the 2, and we pass the turn back to them with open mana. On their upkeep, we decide to Unholy Heat the Stoneforge Mystic, and they try to Spell Pierce us. We proceed to try and pay the 2 mana. It makes the Pierce fizzle, and we kill the Mystic. Opponent plays Marsh Flats. They play the Sigarda's Aid, triggering our Connive. We draw Cements. We discard the Spiral Canal in our hand. Their Aid resolves, and they pass it back to us. We draw and consider for the turn. We play the Floated Strand, fetch for another island. We decide to consider. We find a Ragavan. We keep it, and then we play Explosives for 1. We connive yet again, pitching away the Steam Vents. And then we attack 2 and just pass the turn. Actually, we don't pass the turn, I lied. We end up choosing to cast a Murktide here as a 7/7. So opponent untaps. They draw to fetch for Plains, and then they play Piercer Paladin. And also play Colossus Hammer, and allowing us to connive yet again. And opponent decides to concede at that point, and that's it. So we beat Hammer in 3, so which is great. So let's hop on over to round 2. All right, we're back with round 2, game 1. So let's see what we end up playing against here. We choose to play first, and we decide to maul our hand. Opponent decides to keep on 7. We just need to keep this hand, and we ship away the Odawara. So we start off with Misty, and pass the turn to the opponent. Opponent plays a Polluted Delta, and they fetch for Watery Grave untapped. So seeing this, I was kind of confused what they were doing. Like, I thought they had to possibly be some kind of Death Shadow deck. So I was thinking maybe Grixis Death Shadow, but we'll see how things go. But they decide to Thoughtseize us. They take my Ledge Shredder. End of turn, we decide to fetch for an island and play Consider. We keep the Unholy Heat. So we untap and draw, play the Canal, and then we decide to pass the turn back to the opponent again. They play an island, and then they try to pass the turn back to us. So at the end of the turn, we go Consider again. We bend the Cements, drawing the Lightning Bolt. So on our turn, we draw Cements. We play tapped. And then we end up passing the turn back to the opponent. Opponent considers an end of turn. and they keep on top. And then they consider again, and then they bin a Delta. So they untap. They play an Odawara. They choose to play Murktide as a 6/6. So we untap. We draw a bubble. It's actually, I believe, because it's Delirium. We play the bubble, sack it. We reveal Lock off the top of their deck. It's kind of awkward, but we try to go Unholy Heat with Delirium. Opponent then goes Stubborn Denial, and that really threw me off. I'm like, what is happening? The Stubborn Denial is not usually in Dev Shadow decks. And then we realize that it's Blue Black Shadow. So it was very interesting to see. It was a deck that was like randomly popping up at the time, but I haven't seen it since. It's interesting when I ran into it. So we decided to just play our own Murktide as a 6/6 as well. So have bouncing Murktides off each other. So we draw Canal off the bobble from my opponent's upkeep. Opponent decides to tap 6. I take 6 since we are technically ahead in the race. Opponent passes the turn. We have double lightning bolt here, which is kind of neat. So we decide to attack. Opponent goes to 9. And then I try to play Expressive Iteration. Opponent plays the Adrenaline Lock that we know about. So we play the Canal tapped and then pass the turn back to the opponent. Opponent decides not to attack this time and ship the turn back to us again. Play another bobble. Play the bobble. Look at the top card of Backcourt's Lever again. They reveal a Water Grave, so there's at least that. And we also opt to not attack. And then we pass her back to the opponent. Opponent decides to play Archmage's Charm to draw 2 cards. So we draw Dreadstone off the upkeep bobble trigger. Opponent goes to 7, so they're very close to dying to just 2 bolts. But yet again, opponent sits back. They're Murktide. I mean, there's technically an argument for me playing double bolt on a Murktide when they were tapped out there, but I figured that I could play the slow game and just kind of get them out sooner rather than later. So I draw an Isle for the turn, play it, and still proceed to sit back. Opponent plays another Archmage's Charm. And then we pass the turn back to them. So play Rainforest. They fetch down to 6 now, so they are 2 bolts away from death. So they decide to play another Murktide. But I decide to dress down in response. They play Stubborn Denial. So now they have a 10/10 and a 7/7 Murktide. They tap a 10. Wheel 3. So I just decide to bolt them. Untap. Counterspell on my second bolt. And I decide to concede at that point. Alright, we're back with game 2 from round 2. Just briefly checking how we sideboarded here. So seems that we took out the 2 dress downs, we took out a counter spell, and we took out 2 lightning bolts and 2 unholy heats and a Ragavan. So we brought in a Flusterstorm, we brought in 2 minor missteps, we brought in 2 unlicensed sources to combat their Murktides. We brought in a Season Pyromancer for the card advantage game. We brought in 2 subtleties again to combat their Murktides. And that's it. So I decided to be on the play. I decided to keep this hand. Looks pretty good. This Reinforce could get us a red source, get a Ragman down early. And which is what we did. So Misty Rainforest, fetch Events, play Ragman, and pass turn. Opponent untaps. Well, I guess they don't untap. Well, I went faster. Opponent untapped to play Misty Rainforest and pass her back to me. So we draw minor misstep for the turn here. We decide to go attack them. And we connect. We take our Thought Seeds, which is actually pretty nice here, because we get to play Shredder, and then we get to sack the treasure token to play Thought Seeds on our opponent, while we get to also connive. We drew Pluto Delta, discard an island. We Thought Seeds our hand. They fetch a response. So they decide to shock Watergrave into play off the Mystery Reinforce and Flusterstorm Thoughtseize, which is interesting, but it makes you wonder what was in their hand that they're trying to protect. Right, so they untap. They Fatal Push the Ragavan. And they play an untapped Watergrave, lowering their life total even further. So now they're at 13, which is a starting number for Dev Shadow, as a 0/0. So we draw Stevens, play Delta, we fetch, we grab an island, and then we decide to dash ye old Ragman, getting in there for 3. Opponent unable to block again, so we connect, and we flip over a Scalding Tarn, and decide to pass the turn, returning Ragman back to our hand. And opponent decides to consider it in turn, and they cut the card on top. Opponent plays an island, they play Death Shadow. We try to misstep, and that's good. So then they follow up with a Murktide Regent, which is kind of annoying. We connive, we draw a Consider, and then a bit of Spell Pierce. So they got a 7/7 Murktide Regent on their side. We consider in response, connive, then consider off the connive, and then we see our own Murktide, and we choose to draw it. So we untap, we draw Canal, we play our own Murktide. It's a 7/7 our own. And then we play our own Ragavan, choosing to connive again. We discard a Canal. We drew Pyromancer, which is pretty decent. And then we play a Tat Sequence and proceed to pass. Opponent plays Archmage's Charm to steal our Ragavan. I mean, I didn't really think about it at the time, but it's kind of convenient for them to have done that. We untap a draw. Mr. Rainforest is fine. So we play it. And then we fetch, I believe, for whatever Steam Vents. We go to 13. We choose to play our Pyromancer. We don't get any tokens, but we get to draw 2. And then we draw Iteration and Bolt off of them. We choose to attack for 7. Opponent trades their Murktide really quickly. They did not think twice about it. Opponent decides to consider it in the turn. allowing me to bolt the Ragman while conniving yet again. Leave discarding our own Ragavan there and growing the Shredder to a 4/6. So pass her back. Opponent plays Further Grasp on our Shredder. So now we're left with a Seasoned Pyromancer to lead the way. So we draw Hearse. Play the Hearse. Exile 2 cards. Then we play Iteration. So we take the Prison Bar, we bottom, and then we exile the Spell Snare. Tap 2, and then pass. Opponent passes the turn back to us. Draw a Delta. There's no point in playing the Delta because we have no more lands to fetch. Oh. Yeah, so I kind of pushed through that turn accidentally. So we just ended up attacking for 2. That's all that really happened. So opponent goes to 4. They decide to play Consider. They did a Delta. So we have some 2 cards of Hearse. And then we decide to take the slow road. Just keep attacking the opponent for 2. Opponent taps mana, tries to dismember, sees Pyromancer, which is fine. We now exile 2 more cards from our opponent's graveyard, just keeping the Murktide off from being big at all. Opponent draws, and then they end up trying to pass it to Rabatas again. But even at the turn, we choose to exile the Seasoned Pyromancer from the graveyard to make 2 1/1s. So we can try to keep that clock going. So we smack for 2. Put into 2. An iteration again. Opponent counterspells. We exile 2 more cards from our opponent's graveyard. It's a big Earth right now, but can't really attack with it because I'm afraid of them pushing it. It's not good. They push the Hearse. And opponent sides concede once they have no further routes to these elemental tokens. Alright, and we're back for game 3 of round 2. So let's see how this goes. Opponent decides to be on the play. They mull to 6. We decide to keep this hand. And opponent keeps their 6. So they start off with Misty Rainforest. And they pass the turn to us. We choose to play Flood Strand. And try to pass the turn back to the opponent. Opponent doesn't fetch. So we go Polluted Delta. I decide to fetch. Grab an island. And then consider an end of turn. We keep the Shredder. So we untap. Draw an iteration. Choose to play Canal. Try to resolve a Ledge Shredder. When we enter combat, they decide to fetch for the Watery Grave and Fatal Push our Shredder. So it's our opponent's turn now. They play Misty Rainforest, and then again they decide to pass the turn back to us. So it's a lot of like kind of like Drago situation, them kind of responding to a little bit of our stuff. Nothing too crazy. So we draw a Shredder for the turn again. We just have tons of Shredders. So I play another Shredder, a fetch for an island off the Delta, and they decide to straight up counterspell our Shredder, and then we try to fight back with Fluster Storm. allowing us to resolve a Shredder. They play Water Grave untapped. They fetch Misty for an island. They play Murktide. That's 5/5. We draw spells out for the turn. We decide to play Legislator. Again. And we go Spell Snare on their counter spell. Conniving. Pitching the Ragman. So we got a 2/4 and a 1/3. Opponent attacks for 5. We're gladly happy to take it. They pass turn back to us. We untap. We draw another Bauble. So this is where things get interesting. We play Bauble. We play a second Bauble. Connive triggers. To draw counterspell, we discard Iteration, and then we draw land, discard a Misty. So we have a 2/4 and a 2/4. We sack the first Bauble, targeting our opponent, see Misty, so that's fine. Then we target ourselves with the Bauble. We see Steamets, which is, I'm happy about it, but it's what it is. We attack for 4. They go to 9. And then we pass a turn. Opponent decides to Otawara, bouncing one of our Shredders back to our hand. So that kind of happens. And the opponent untaps. To proceed our turn, we draw 2 cards on our opponent's upkeep because of the 2 bubbles. We ended up drawing the Subtlety, which is pretty sweet. Opponent goes to combat, attacks us again for 5, which we'll take. Opponent plays Misty that we know about. We draw Unholy Heat. We have Delirium, so that Murktide will most likely die if we get to do something about it, which we end up doing. So Unholy Heat targeting a Murktide. They try to Stubborn Denial. Whoop. Oh. Yeah, and then that was kind of a mess of a situation. Sorry about it. So, what ended up happening is obviously we Unholy Heated. They go Stubborn Denial. We go Counterspell. And then Murktide dies. We then proceed to attack with 3. We play Siemens tapped, pass her back to them. They concede because I imagine that whatever they drew, they feel like it's not an answer because the Legislator is going to kill them in 2 turns. And also considering the backup that we have, that if they try to go Death Shadow or another Murktide, we blow them out of the water with this Subtlety because they'll have no backup for whatever spell they're casting. And that's that. So we win again in 3 games, this time over Blue Black Shadow. All right. Now we're back with game 1 of round 3. So let's see how things go. So opponent decides to be on the play. They keep on 7. We keep this hand as well. Opponent starts with Fiery Islet. So seeing Fiery Islet, we imagine that they're on Murktide. Or it could also be Rhinos. There are mostly just 2 decks that play Fiery Islet for the most part. I mean, I guess, does Breach also play Fiery Islet? Maybe they do too. Okay, so there could be a myriad of decks, but most commonly one obviously would be Murktide or Rhinos. So we draw. We play Canal and decide to pass a turn. I believe. Yeah, there we go. And in turn, opponent plays Consider. So now leaving us to believe that it is Murktide. So opponent taps, they play an Iron Mesa. Now we know. Now we don't even know what our opponent is on because they play Iron Mesa. I mean, they could still be on Jeskai Breach. But we decide to untap, draw, play Misty, fetch for an island, and play our Legislator. Also play Bauble, trigger Connive. Opponent plays Bolt to kill our Shredder with the trigger on the stack. Draw, we discard the Expressive Iteration from our hand. And then I bubble my opponent before they fetch, which obviously we shouldn't be doing, but I did because guess at the time I got a little ahead of myself, and we ended up seeing a Boon of the Wish Giver. So now it was really confusing me. So I don't know what deck plays cycling cards. So opponent fetches for a Sacred Foundry tapped, and they untap. We draw Blue Delta on their upkeep. They play Snow Covered Mountain, and they choose to play Teferi, which is kind of annoying. And they take down a draw card. So we end up drawing a Bolt, which is nice for us. We killed the Teferi, and then we play Delta and pass a turn, just to be sure that we don't get knocked by another Teferi. They decide to try and play their own Shredder, so we go Spell Snare, I believe. Yeah. And in turn, we fetch the Delta, grab a Steve, it's tapped. No, untapped again. Jeez. Keep forgetting about these considers in my hand. So we consider, we keep the Murktide. So we untap, draw a bobble. So we play Iteration. We put Shredder in our hand. We bottom counterspell, and we exile Brazen Barber. We play bobble. We crack, targeting our opponent, seeing an effort to fairy. Fortunately, we will not have an answer for that fairy. But Cycle Spoon of the Wish Giver. Wow. So we draw that island that we wanted. And instead of playing the fairy, they opt to play Shredder again. Which is kind of fine for us. I mean, we're kind of happy in that situation. Opponent's also stuck on 3 lands. But yeah, we draw a Delta for the turn. We play an island. We now go for the Murktide Regent. Make an 8/8. Pass for back to the opponent. Opponent tries to go play Teferi. We go Counterspell on the Fairy. And now we have an 8/8 uncontested to just smack our opponent sideways. They go to 5. We now play Shredder again, play a Strand, and pass the turn. Opponent decides to go forward, play Consider, since they don't have an additional blue source at the moment. They bin Bobble, because they need something immediate. They play Chandler. They trigger both the Shredders. So I draw, I discard, dress down, and then I go Unholy Heat, targeting their Shredder. Oh no, I don't. I I was I was hoping to, and then I guess I opted out. But now we know what they're on, which is the Capricious Hellraiser deck that's also at the time started popping up. Don't know how credible this deck actually is. I also don't even know if this deck is still existent in the format either in Modern, but it's wild times played against. But yeah, there we go. Now we're Unholy Heating. I guess I backtracked on Unholy Heat initially, in hopes to see what my opponent was planning to discard to their Shredder first, because information is free. So I was just trying to slow things down because, as you saw throughout this game so far, I just kept doing things fast. Uh, when I should have been doing them, I should have been taking my time. But yeah, so killed the Shredder. They resolved the Chandler. They play Sacred Foundry tapped. We fetch Stevens into play tapped. And then we untap. We draw a counterspell. We attack for 10, forcing them to have to block our Murktide or they die. So we get them for 2. and then try to pass the turn back to them. They try to unholy heat a Murktide, and then we decide to counterspell their unholy heat. Opponent goes to play Hellraiser. I'm trying to understand what this card even does again. So when it comes to play, exile 3 cards at random from their graveyard. You choose a non-creature, non-land from among them and copy it. Oh, okay. So they exiled, which is funny, an Aramis, a Ball, and a Consider, which are obviously not good cards, and they concede. All right, we're back for game 2 of round 3 against this Jeskai Capricious Hellraiser deck. Let's just see quickly how I sideboarded here. So we, from how it looks, we took out 2 dress downs, took out 2 lightning bolts and 2 ragmans, and ended up bringing in the 1 Fluster Storm, 2 Unless's Hearses, the Season Pyromancer, and 2 Subtleties. All right. So opponent decides to be on the play again. Opponent kept their hand. I kept my hand. So we're all pretty happy at the moment. Opponent starts with Canal, and they choose to play Ragman and a Bauble, and then they crack targeting themselves. Oh, they targeted me. I was trying to understand who they targeted, but I didn't see the arrow here, but yeah. Okay, so they targeted me. So let's see what they saw. They saw my counterspell. Okay. So fortunately we have to go Shock and Unholy Heat. Oh, Bubble, Crack, see their Bauble, and then go Unholy Heat, targeting a Ragavan, and hope that they don't have a second one to dash with. They Shock. They play another Bauble that we saw, targeting me again. And they have a License Hearse. So this is going to be an interesting game. So we untap, we draw a Legislator of a certain Plain Island. And I just pass because I'm afraid of them resolving at the ferry. So they go Dragon's Rich Chandler, and I choose to counterspell it. Don't want to deal with it. So I untap, I draw an island, I play the island. I choose to play Legislator because Spell Pierce will allow me to still counterspell the Teferi. They choose Stun and License Hearse, my only card in my graveyard, which is the counterspell. Scalding Tarn. They decide to pay 3 mana, without fetching Scalding Tarn to play Teferi. I go Spell Pierce, and it resolves. So Captain Teferi. We untap. We draw Murktide. We play Iteration. We put Consider in hand. We bottom island, and we exile Legislator. I shock Cements and play the Legislator that's in exile. Conniving. They exile 2 cards from my graveyard again. So this Murktide is going to be far from doing anything ever. They decide to fetch in the meantime as well. I draw on License Hearse. I bid the Murktide since it's not going to happen anytime soon, and I bash him for 2. Put on taps. They draw a Scalding Tarn, and they play Cements tapped. And pass turn, which is fine. I draw a Legislator again. I play a License Hearse. And then I play another Legislator, which I should have done Legislator first, so I could get 3 Connive triggers, but oh well. So I discard, Consider, they exile 2 cards from my graveyard again. I discard Ragavan. So now I have a 3/5 and a 2/4. And I swing and put in the 9. They untap, they play Mountain. So End of turn, I exile 2 cards from the graveyard. The Unholy Heat, my 3/5 Shredder. I untap. I draw an Unholy Heat, so I play Iteration, and then they concede. So we win round 3 in 2 games. Alright, here we are for round 4, game 1. So I decide to be on the play. I choose to keep his hand. Opponent's mulled 6. And we start things off with Spirebuff Canal. And we pass the turn. So opponent plays Black Cliffs. And they start off with Ragman. So at end of turn, we unlead the Ragman. We draw dress down for the turn. So we play Seavents untapped. And passed the turn. So we play Black Cliffs. And they choose to evoke Grief. So in response, I choose to dress down so that we don't get thought seized by the Grief. And dress down goes away. So we untap, we draw. It's kind of awkward that we have no lands to play. So we pass turn, back to the opponent. Opponent plays a third Black Leaf Cliffs. So quite the variety they got going on there. So the attack, we take 3. They try to evoke another Grief. So in response this time, we go Unholy Heat on their initial Grief. And then they go Grief, targeting us. They take our Expressive Iteration. And then they try to Malice. So we try to heat the Grief. And it's gone. Boom. So now that the opponent has no more cards in hand, which is good for us, we draw Dress Down. So we proceed to play Expressive Iteration. And there we go. We found the land. So we put Iteration in hand, bottom ledge Shredder, and exile Delta. We play the Delta. We pass a turn. They play the 4th Black Leaf Cliffs. So we fetch. We put an island on the play, and we consider. We put Ragman in hand. Play an island on our turn. We dash Ragman. We attack. Get our trigger on. We exile a Takanuma, Vandenmire. And then in turn with Ragman, return it to our hand. And then on the opponent's next turn, they concede. Alright, welcome back to game 2 of round 4. So let's start things off yet again and see how we sideboarded. So, in this matchup, we decided to take out 2 Spell Pierces, 2 Spell Snares. We took out a place of the Ragman. And in place of those, we brought in 2 Braids. We brought in Season Pyromancer, 2 Subtleties, and a Fury. So let's see how game 2 goes. Put us on the play. They chose to keep their hand. We chose to keep our hand. And they start off with a Land Out of Void, making my Murktide region a real stinker. It's unfortunate, but it's what it is. But as the opponent starts 1 less card in their hand. So they started with Bloodstained Mire, and they pass the turn to us. So we draw a Ledge Shredder and play Canal. They fetch for a Blood Crit, tapped. And they go to their turn. We untap, play Black Leaf Cliffs, and they decide to play Crocs. And I mean, Crocs is fine because that allows us to pitch the Murktide since it's pretty dead. And then I believe in end of turn we decide to consider here. Yeah. So we keep the dress down, and then we untap. We draw Stevens. We shock with the Stevens and decide to play the Unlicensed Hearse, so we can immediately get the Crocs out of the graveyard. So on our turn, I play Bloodstained Mire. I fetch for a Swamp. and they play Zeus Pyromancer, which feeds more into our Elastigirst, which is fine. So on our turn, we draw a Fury. That's an interesting draw. But yeah, so we play Misty Rainforest, we fetch for an island, play Ledge Shredder, and pass turn. So put it on taps. They play Terminate on my Ledger Shredder, which, I mean, happens. So it's dead. We play another Black League Cliffs tapped. And I believe we go ahead and try to do nothing. Above an end of turn, we exile 2 more cards from our opponent's graveyard with our Hearse. So we untap. We drew a Bolt. And then we decide to pass the turn back to the opponent again. Just taking it slowly but surely. So opponent decides to go straight to combat. Tap for 3 again. Now we decide to bolt their Pyromancer. So, and then still in combat, we eat the Pyromancer so they can't go to second main phase and play land and exile. So we just get hit for 1. And then they choose to Hardcast Grief, which is fun. So we go dress down, draw an island, and then Grief does nothing when it comes into play. And dress down goes away. So we untap. So we drew a Murktide again. So we see some cards here. We put a Salty in hand. We bottom the Borrower. We exile Misty. We play the Misty. We bolt Grief. We exile the last 2 cards in their graveyard. And then pass the turn back to them. So opponent decides to go to combat. They hit me again for 1. So I'm at 12. They play Fable. So we get a 2-2. We fetch an end turn, grab Stevens, tapped. So we untap and draw a bubble for the turn. We play Island. And I believe we just slam down Fury. So kill the 2 creatures. Play Bobble. Crack. Look at the top card of opponent's library. Unfortunately, it's another Season Pyromancer. So that's going to be an interesting one. But we decide to crew the Unlicensed Hearse since there's nothing else to do with it. We smack for 8. But our opponent has Fatal Push. Which makes me really sad because obviously that was a big creature. So we draw for Bobble. We find a Canal, which isn't great, but opponent can now decide to discard cards. They discard Malice, draw a card, which is Cliffs, and then they proceed to play their Season Pyromancer, and then bolt our Fury, which also is upsetting. So we untap, we play Spiral of Canal, pass the turn. At some point, we're just gonna slam this Murktide Region for 7, just feel it. Yeah, opponent makes a 2-2, Auto Reflection, Kikijiki. The attack for 2, and I believe we just take it. And then the turn we consider. We find our Hearse again, but instead we decide to bin it. There's no reason to keep it around anymore. We have Bolt, and then we bolt the Reflection of Kikijiki. So we draw an Unholy Heat for the turn, and we decide to pass the turn again. Opponent goes to combat, swing for 2. Go to 7. play an island. And yeah, we go ahead and they slam down at Murktide as a 7-mana 3/3 as Magic intended. Opponent decides to do nothing, pass her back to us, so it's our turn. And we decide to go on the offensive now, try and erase our opponent's Pyromancer. Not a great race situation for us, but you know, we gotta do what we gotta do. So opponent back to their turn. Move to combat. They swing again for 2. Putting us to 5. And then now we decide to go on the offensive and play Subtlety, even though I should have played. Actually, well, I guess technically I don't really want to play it to block the Pyromancer and then get the ability to make 2/1/1s. But maybe I should have. I was holding on to the Subtlety for way too long, I think, anyways. So yeah, we got Subtlety now. Now we can untap, increase the clock, swing for 6, try to put him to 9. And then try to pass turn back to them. Now we're winning the race, obviously, because 2 attacks from us versus 2 attacks from them. They would need a 3rd attack. Opponent goes to Grief. Response, we bolt the opponent. And then on Holy Heat, there sees Pyromancer. And then they can see it, and that's that. We win another match here in 2. So now we're 4-0. And this time we beat Black Red Scam in 2. Alright, welcome back to the final round, round 5. Game 1. I wanted Daros, so I chose to be on the play. I decided to keep this hand. Opponent decided also to keep their hand. We start off with Bobble, targeting myself, seeing a Spire Buff Canal. I play a Delta, I fetch, and then I grab a Steam Vents, Shocking, and pass to my opponent, because I didn't really need to fetch in that moment in time. Just taking damage where I don't need to. But we draw a Bubble off the Bubble trigger on the opponent's upkeep. Opponent plays Inverted Catacombs, fetching for a forest, and starting with a Noble Hierarch. So I proceed to bolt the, as they would say, the bird, but it said bolt the goblin, I guess. Bolt the Mana Dork. That's what it is. So we untap. We draw no to water for the turn. It's kind of awkward. We play Bubble. We look at the top card of our opponent's library. It's a Twilight Mire. And play the Stevens untapped. Just taking more glorious damage. And we draw an island off the upkeep Bubble trigger. So he plays that Twilight Mire that we know about, and he plays Triangle Guys, which we in response consider. Didn't consider drawing the Holy Heat. So we end up taking 2. So untap we draw, consider, play an island. I believe we play Murktide here as a 5/5. Yeah. Oh, it's a 6/6. Yes, because it's a 3/3, and we exile 3 instances. Yes. So we have a 6/6 versus our 2/1. Put on taps to draw for turn. Play Swamp. And I believe it's Grist. Yeah. Which is kind of annoying. Not about it. So in response, I Unholy Heat the Grist. So I need some amount of pressure against them. Or just gonna die outright, you know? So we kill the Grist, then their trigger sacrifices their trigger with guys to make it bigger to kill it Murktide, and then they hit us for 3, we go to 10. So we play Misty, and we pass her. So they play number Twilight Mire, they attack us for 3 again. In response, I fetch for an island. I consider, again, a response. See, never consider, draw to consider, because obviously at this point we want to feel our Murktide in our hand. We bid the Ragavan to draw a Legislator. Then they proceed to play Wall of Roots, which is fine. So, um, so we tap 2 mana to play Legislator. Then we tap out to play Murktide. This time also as a 6/6. But we get the Kanai, which is great. Discarding the Otawara. Yeah. So we got a 6/6 and 1/3. Opponent decides to play Jawmoth. It's going to be interesting. And they pass turn. So we untap. We draw a Ragavan. So we express iteration first. We see Lightning Bolt put in our hand. We bottom the other iteration and we exile Bauble. Play the Bauble. Connive. We draw an Holy Heat, which is great. Discard the Ragavan, which is going to do nothing on this board. Then we sacrifice the Bauble, targeting our opponent, seeing a Nurturing Peat land. Nurturing Peat land, yes. And then we proceed to combat, attacking for 8, trying to get some combat action going on here, which is fine. And they go 11. We pass the turn, but in response to us passing the turn, we try to play an Elite on their Yawgmoth, and they just let it happen. This is cool for us, I mean, don't mind. So we draw off the Bauble trigger, it's a Seaman's, fortunately. Put it place a Peat land that we know about. They attack for 3. We take the 3. And then they play Eldritch Evolution, Blood Artist. Into another Eldritch Evolution, giving us a Connive trigger. Draw. We discard the canal that we drew. We get drained by the Blood Artist. Into Grist. The opponent then tries to do the sack trigger. So we get drained. Kill the Murktide. We go to 1. We're not dead. But I feel like I should have used that bolt at some point. But yeah, we end up trying to kill the Grist, which honestly is something that we need to do. So, opponent taps. They decide to draw off the Peat land. They shock one overgrown 2-minute play. And then to play another Yawgmoth. We decide in response to play Dress Down. And then bolt the opponent, with me realizing that I'm also silly, where I could have gone bolt first, then Dress Down, and then Connive. But I didn't do that. So Dress Down goes away. Trying all those flood strands. It's not great. So we have to go Dress Down and drew more lands. So pass her back to the opponent. Innkeeper, and we die. Alright, so here we are for game 2 of round 5. So I'm on the play. So I choose to be on the play. I mull this hand. Opponent keeps their 7. I also mull that hand. Mull 5. So it looks dire. I keep this 1. Set away 2 cards. So start off a canal, pass turn, opponent plays a forest, play Yamawolf, and then turn I consider. I bend the Delta, draw a canal. I draw a bolt, play another canal. Opponent plays a swamp. They go to combat. I go to 19. And they proceed to play Wall Roots, where I counterspell it. So I draw a Subtlety, I place Events untapped. Opponent plays a Blooming Marsh, and they play Scavenging Ooze, and in a Hierarch. So I bolt the Ooze, and then I braid the Hierarch. Opponent attacks again for 1, so I go to 16. I play Fiery Ally on my turn, and then I pass the turn back to them. Opponent plays Beseiju. So opponent attacks again. I go to 15. They play Birds. I decide to Subtlety their Birds because that's something for me to snag. So I untap, I draw an island. So I crack my Islet to draw. Opponent decides to Endurance me. Instead of letting me draw first. Instead of letting me attack first, but I guess it makes sense when you don't know what's in my hand with one card. So the odds of me drawing a counterspell, as opposed to having one in the hand, is higher, I guess. You draw a bubble, play the bubble, crack to see if the top card of the deck. They have Verticagles on top, so it's kind of good for me. I play the island. And pass the turn back to them. So we draw a canal, it's the bubble trigger. One plays Catacombs. They play Strangleroot guys. And attack with the Endurance. The block, so I go to 11. Draw the turn, draw an iteration, hoping that will get me out of this predicament. So I put on Holy Heat in my hand, I bottom the Misty, and I exile Consider. I play the Consider, and then I put Murktide in my hand. Put a canal tapped, and I proceed to pass the turn. Opponent chooses to go to combat and attack with everything. I block the Strangleroot Geist and take 4. Go to 7. And then I believe I try to kill the Geist afterwards. Complete. So slowly clean the board out. So I untap, I draw Unlicensed Hearse, which is massive. But first, I proceed to exile my whole graveyard, tap 3 mana to play Murktide as a 6/6. Then I attack for 3. And then I post combat play Unlicensed Hearse. And opponent sacrifices Verticagles for a Dryad Arbor. So opponent untaps, they draw. They play another Strangleroot Geist. And they're just getting in there. So we go ahead, we kill the Endurance. We take 4, go to 3. And I exile 2 other creatures from the graveyard. So I tap, I draw Floated Strand, which is rough. And I tap for 6. Oh, yes. So I tap for 6, I put in the 10. And pass. They go to 9. They go within lethal now. Which, if they just didn't fetch, they wouldn't be almost dead. So, opponent draws for the turn. They play Noble, which doesn't really help them. They attack for 3. I choose to crew the Unlicensed Hearse, and the opponent concedes. Alright, so we're back for game 3 of round 5. I forgot to mention how I sideboarded in this matchup, so let me just quickly review here. So we basically brought in, well, I brought in one minor misstep. Well, sorry. So first, let me just mention what I took out. So I took out 2 Spell Pierces, 2 Spell Snares. Took out 4 Agavans, and I decided to bring in 1 minor misstep, 2 Braids, 2 Unlicensed Sources, as you saw, 2 Subtleties, as you saw, and 1 Fury. So, opponent gets to be on the play for game 3. They choose to go first. They maul to 6. I keep on 7. And they keep on 6. So, they start off with Blooming March into Mana Dork, Bird's Paradise. So I start off with a shot Steaments into Bolting their Bird, as the cool kids would say. So opponent taps, they play another Noble Hierarch, and they're also stuck on mana. So what do? We play the island, and we kill their Mana Dork. So they untap again, and they decide to play Dryad Arbor, and also a Young Wolf. So they really want to make that mana plan work. Unfortunately, a removal train does not keep going, but we do draw a minor misstep, which is kind of neat. We play Odawara and pass the turn, so they untap. So for 2 mana to play Wall of Roots, but I'm going to counterspell that, because again, if I could restrict their mana, then that's great. They'll attack for 1, and then I believe an end of turn we'll just go Consider. Yeah, and then we bin the Consider and draw the Misty Rainforest. On tap, we draw Legislator. So now I just go for Murktide. And then play Misty. And I believe we pass, yeah. I don't really want to tap out, go Legislator Murktide, and Murktide is just the best option right now. Barring they don't play land Grist. So. Still no land drop to play Noble, so I could have minor misstepped the Noble. I, for some reason, let it resolve. But getting to snag the Young Wolf still felt pretty good either way. So, and then fetched for a Steaments untapped, just so I can have a second red source at this point. And considering the turn, I kept the Legislator. Actually, I binned the Legislator and drew a Legislator. That was confusing. His opponent decides not to attack, pass turn back to me. We got another Murktide here. But instead, we're just going to play, I believe, the 2 Legistrators. Yeah. Connive. Binning. At this point, Lightning Bolt. And go to combat for 8. And pass it to the opponent. So opponent plays Vernant Catacombs. And then they play Grist. They sacrifice Young Wolf to destroy my Murktide. So we untap and draw an expressive iteration. I play the iteration first. So I'm going to put Bolt in hand, bottom Hearse, Exile Strand, play Strand, um, fetch Strand for a Demons untapped again. We'll play Murktide. Nope. First, we'll play Bolt up on. Sorry, yeah. We play Bolt. We drew discarded Strand, discarded Heat, Bolt the Hierarch, then send 1 at Grist, 3 at the opponent. So opponent goes to 9. And then we proceed to play another Gigantic Murktide for 8 and pass. Opponent decides to fetch, go to 8, grab an Overgrowth Tomb, play tap, and untap. And then opponent decides to concede, and there you go. 5-0. There you have it, our first modern trophy, 5-0 with Blue Red Murktide. Let's go!